Welcome to Health Talk. Today we're going to talk about tennis and the female athlete. Thank you for joining us. And today we have with us Katie Peuvrelle, sports psychologist, Eric Vescuso, tennis pro, Courtside Club, and Dr. Tiffany Gorman, sports medicine and family practice. So we're going to talk about the female athlete because sometimes they're overlooked, especially in different ages of adolescence and play, and also as the adult female athlete goes on, becomes the weekend warrior, etc. So in tennis, so Eric, tell us, you've helped a lot of different groups, What is it you like about teaching girls' teams or ladies' teams?
I sometimes think that the women are, I like to say, I work a lot with beginners, and they're kind of sponges. They soak everything in. They haven't been taught a lot of the bad habits, and they start out fresh and they're excited. They tend to enjoy that team atmosphere, whereas the men a little bit more are, hey, tell me when to show up, I'll get a sandwich and we'll have a beer afterwards and whatever. Whereas the women get into it, and there's a lot of camaraderie and good sportsmanship, and it's just fun. For a lot of them, they didn't play high school sports, they didn't grow up playing sports, so it's fun to watch them progress. And the mental game comes into it now and then, but for the beginners, it's more about having fun and just getting them out there.
So as a sports psychologist, I'm sure you see many people who start a sport or are really interested in a sport, different ages of engagement. Now, what is it that you look for motivation or for a good outcome, a good sports journey?
Right. Well, I think the journey part of it is important, is to recognize that it is a journey, and as each athlete or beginner begins in their journey, if they think only about the winning or losing aspect of it, then they sort of lose the process of the joy in the learning and the joy in the sport itself.
So, and I'm sure in family practice you see adolescent girls come in. Sometimes they're dejected because they lost, they didn't get into the sectionals or whatever. So what do you say? Because you have to manage these young women from birth to forever.
Well, we try and look at it and get them to look at life's perspective, that it's not just that one game, and if they're at that level where they're really that dejected, they might be looking to go on to play in college, and we point out that there's always going to be another game, another tournament, always something else to look forward to.
And also you see them with injuries which make them kind of sad and dejected also, when you have to work through them with this injury in the time. Like, what are the common injuries you see in like teenage girls for tennis?
I would say, for women in general, we'll see pretty much the same injuries. There'll be overuse injuries is what we typically are seeing, and it will involve the upper extremity, the shoulder, the elbow. So you can have rotator cuff tendonitis, the classic tennis elbow. It's a sport for life. They like to be out there and be social, and therefore they're doing the same stressors over and over to those joints, and they don't really get a chance to rest them.
Now, sometimes you coach the women's tennis teams and you have different level leagues and all that, and then they kind of really get into it, especially for match play and all that. So what do you tell them?
Well, every individual is different, and so it really is, we joke at the club that we should have an honorary psych degree because of all the stuff we deal with, but every individual is different, and I feel like you just have to feed into and understand their personality. I mean, some of them you can go out and you can be honest with them and say, hey, look, this is what you're doing wrong. There's not many that are like that. I mean, I tend to to stay positive, not focus on them. Just try to make it as though, look, you lost that first set, you got nothing to lose now. I mean, you were playing your game, it didn't work. Let's adjust and see what happens. And I think that, I think I've heard Gordon say this a million times. I've lost 1 million matches, and I'm a pretty good tennis player, and I'm going to lose 1 million more. And so if they're so focused on results, they're not going to get anywhere. So we're going to learn from our mistakes, and practice makes perfect. I mean, the more you play, the more you won't be comfortable unless you continue to take chances and go out there and play.
Now, when you teach the 16-year-olds or the 15-year-old girls who go to the NorCal tournaments versus the ladies in the 2.5 and the 3.0? What's the difference in motivation? And Katie, I'm going to ask you too.
Sure.
Well, I mean, certainly in terms of tennis, teaching, it's skill-wise, it's very different. But in terms of the mental game, I think there's just more of people are people, and so even though they might be much more skilled than say the 2.5 or the 3.0, they're still dealing with this themselves, and that's kind of, you have to almost get out of yourself, because you'll hear people say tennis is 90% mental, 10% tennis, and it's a belief. It's if you're going out there and you really don't think you can win, you won't win, and even if it's just for a second, even if it's subconsciously. So even though the levels might be different, a lot of the mental stuff, strategy-wise on the court it could be very different, because they get it a little bit more. But
you mean the 17-year-olds?
The 17, the 16, 17-year-olds that have been playing for a while, they understand the game more, but there's still, it's still
have to be focused.
Yeah, there's still a confidence factor, and there's still, I think, keeping things light and just making it so that the results aren't the number one thing. It's about life experience and playing the game you love for as long as you want to.
Now, which group do you think keeping the joy in play is the easiest? Which group, the 16-year-old girl
easiest?
or the 40-year-old lady who's finding it for the first time?
Maybe the 16-year-old girl.
Keeping the joy part.
Keeping the joy part of it, yeah.
Why? Because the 40-year-old already has a persona, already has an identity,
Right.
so you would expect the joy to be easier.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, maybe they have different concepts of what joy is, maybe,
Right.
and they have different life experiences that have led up to that point. But I work with a lot of teenagers, primarily teenagers, and there is sort of just at that age, even though they're learning and changing and becoming young women, there still is an underlying joy and a desire to have fun. And when I really can get to that, then that becomes their foundation for life, basically, because sport is a metaphor for life. And they can come from that and move forward and then be successful in whatever they do.
Now, I think probably right before they have that final match or something, is there a difference in these 16-year-old girls, that what you're going to say to them at that, before they go on the court, and what you would say to the weekend league players? Is there something slightly different to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I almost feel like the kids would be a little bit more tougher on themselves, just because they're really not, when you're a kid, you're not your own person. I mean, you're trying to figure out who you are, and so you're thinking about, oh, is Dad shaking his head, when I'm missing shots? How's my behavior on the court? What am I doing at school? They're not as balanced, and so I think you have to be a little, and women tend to be more sensitive than men in general, and I think I'm pretty sensitive, but I think that so you have to, you walk a fine line. I mean, you have to say the right things. You certainly don't want to put somebody in a position where they're not going to go out and feel like they want to give their best or they want to compete. And I think for the fun aspect, I think for me, I've had a little bit of the opposite effect. I totally see where you're coming from with that, but I think for me, I always say to the women, look, you're paying for this, and so if you want a drill sergeant, it's not going to be me. I mean, I want you to have fun. I want you to learn. Sometimes with with the kids that are kind of beginner level, there's a whole group of them. They have a blast. But I think when it starts to get, I know that
serious.
When I was 16, 17, I couldn't say every day that I walked away having fun. I wish I could have, but and maybe it was the coaches, maybe it was me, other factors, but it seemed like there was more pressure at that time.
Or because by the time you're a competitive junior, the competitive junior has been playing a long time already.
And it's an individual sport. It's
Right.
It's nice with the adults that we've taken it in college tennis into more of a team atmosphere, but you're pretty lonely out there.
So when in your practice of sports medicine and family practice,